Phrasal verbs are something that I hear a lot of students complaining about, and it's because they're difficult to teach. They have their own rules. Not really, they don't really have rules, but they're really simple words that are put together with a preposition, and they really don't make sense. You can't guess what a phrasal verb means in most cases. What it seems like it might be doing could be a completely different meaning. And the truth is, for English speakers, phrasal verbs are a very simple way of expressing something, and we like to use them a lot because they're small words and they're very easy, and I don't know, we feel like we're speaking in a simple way when we're using phrasal verbs. For English learners, it's like a nightmare because these phrasal verbs don't have an obvious meaning, and sometimes they're together and sometimes they're separated, and like, how do you learn all of this stuff? So it kind of feels like a secret code that only native speakers know. And the truth is that I'm going to teach you how to learn phrasal verbs in the same way that I learned phrasal verbs. And I've developed these lessons in this specific way because I think it's important to learn to have an instinct for if a phrasal verb is correct together or apart, and to just understand the meaning when you hear something instead of thinking of it like individual words, okay? So in each of our lessons, we have one example where we have a sentence that does not use a phrasal verb. It actually has an alternative meaning. And then the second sentence is the same, except we're using the phrasal verb that means the same thing. And each of these lessons has an audio track so that you can listen to the phrasal verb and hear how it's used. And I encourage you to listen to the lessons several times. Try to become familiar with how you heard it. Maybe you heard it together, maybe it's a separated phrasal verb, maybe it was used both ways. Okay? Now, the second part of our lessons is called the phrasal verb story. And what we have done is we've taken 10 of the previous phrasal verb lessons and we've put them all into one story. And at first, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. If you just listen to the audio, you'll feel like, well, I didn't understand anything. But we're actually going to use a technique that I taught you in lesson 1 that's called the anticipation technique to help you understand the context of the phrasal verb in different ways. So what you're going to do is read the phrasal verb story, the transcription that we have available. Every time the phrasal verb is used, at the end, there'll be a little meaning or an explanation that shows the alternative meaning of that phrasal verb to help you understand this story better. So when you read the story the first time, you'll see the phrasal verb, and then afterwards, immediately you will see an alternative meaning for that phrasal verb. And this will help you to understand what the story is about. These stories are kind of crazy. I had to think of how to connect each of these phrasal verbs together in a short story. And that took a lot of creativity, and I know that crazy things are easier to remember. Visual experiences, like I'm telling you a story that's unbelievable. So once you understand this story, you're going to listen to the phrasal verb story, and your mind already knows what this story is about. So when you're hearing it, you'll hear this phrasal verb and you'll know what it means. And that's the first step to being able to process and comprehend these phrasal verbs. So I want you to try this lesson. This is something that is probably really a good activity for someone who's an upper intermediate or an advanced level learner already. But if you're an intermediate level learner, I invite you to try listening at least to the audio lessons that introduce the meaning of the phrasal verbs. And maybe one day when you are at an advanced level, you will enjoy these stories and find them just as useful as the rest of our students. But phrasal verbs are important in conversation, so don't forget about them and don't try to hide from them. Get lessons like these that are actually going to help you to learn them easier and the same way that native speakers did.